welcome to the EI Café with Azeem, where I give late look back at the lives and business of today's most important elements with emotional intelligence. You will learn how emotional intelligence can be a key factor for your success in both personal and professional life. From leadership, collaboration, organization culture, positive mindset to raising kids. You will hear key life lessons and tips from most prominent personalities, business leaders, entrepreneurs, emotional intelligence practitioners, and executive coaches from all over the world. So, sit back, relax with a cup of coffee, and let's get into the show. This is EI Cafe with Azeem. Complex problem solving, critical thinking, coordinating well with others, and resolving conflict are all skills deemed commanding in this so-called fourth industrial revolution, a term describes the economic impact of big data, artificial intelligence, and robotics. Association leaders who expect their organizations to grow and thrive have a responsibility to foster these attributes in their employees. The key attribute behind all these skills is simply emotional intelligence. And again, the contrast of artificial intelligence. These are important skills to master in all career levels. A very warm welcome to the show, and I am your host Azeem Sahir, a human capital specialist, a Lego series play facilitator, ICF certified coach, and an emotional intelligence practitioner. Here we are again for another exciting episode with an exciting topic, a 30 minutes of valuable learning. Today's topic is rise of emotional intelligence in the 21st century as a key skill. We all know all the organizations are looking for profitability, growth, expansion, with the terms coming like artificial intelligence, RPA, robotics, digitalization, and automation. So why we need emotional intelligence? To discuss this, I have one of my great colleague, all the way from UK. Let me introduce her. She's a fantastic individual. She's an experienced facilitator, trainer, presenter, and a coach with a passion of making a difference to others. Over the past 15 years, she has coached, trained, and engaged with individuals, teams, and business to be at their best more of the time. She's also the social media influencer into utilizing the power of communication and positivity virtually, especially the ripple effect. We will talk about that as well. She always has a focus on creating a lasting, impactful experience to individuals and teams to support sustainable workplace and personal application to their learnings. Ladies and gentlemen, let me please welcome Emma Lloyd, Head of Experience, MB People UK. Emma, welcome to the cafe.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to spend time with you today. I also have wonderful fond memories of Sri Lanka. My father took me there when I was younger. So I'm delighted to be connecting with you, but also with anybody else that's joining us today in the cafe.
Awesome. And it's really surprising that you have visited Sri Lanka. So let's hear about that later in the show as well. So Emma, the topic, rise of emotional intelligence in the 21st century as a key skill. Everybody has been talking around artificial intelligence, a lot of research, R&D happening, digitalization, automation, self-driving cars coming in, a lot of things. In that element, right, what are the reasons as to why we are seeing emotional intelligence as an increasingly growing trend throughout the business? What would your take?
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think there's a lot of buzz around the word emotional intelligence and EQ. It was only last year that the World Economic Forum ranked emotional intelligence as one of the top 10 most important workplace skills. And they said that it was like a critical ingredient for leadership. And I guess some of that reason is that the research now demonstrates, and there is so much out there, that high IQ and EQ together, and particularly that higher EQ, it allows us to be up to 127 times more productive. Well, it's all about doing more with less. So of course, and businesses are going, hang on a minute, what is this EQ? But it's much more than that as well. I think it is around performance, but it's also a direct link to resilience. So if you think around the ever-changing landscape, certainly 2020 has demonstrated it as well, it allows us to engage with challenges. It allows us to fight back and from setbacks, from adversity as well. And we're able to learn from our experiences to then mean that maybe we won't suffer so much from sort of burnout. So we've got the productivity, the resilience, and interestingly, the irony isn't lost with this statement in that we are not working so much in isolation. And I realize the irony of 2020, where most people have been working on their own and from home and remotely. But what I mean by that is we are very much connected. So we're working with others, we're in teams, and individuals that are able to foster that emotional intelligence, their teams are more connected, they're stronger, they have a sense of belonging, and of course the business benefits of something like that are absolutely endless. So I think in summary, it is that productivity, the resilience, but also that connectivity, which is critical as we zoom through quite literally the 21st century.
I really like the way you put forward the benefit, right? We are very human. We look always for the benefit, right? At the end of the day, what's in it for me, right? That's what the question. Like, why should I do this? Why should I do that? In that line, Emma, what are the benefits and impacts of supporting individuals and teams to develop emotional intelligence? Because that's what we always talk about. World Economic Forum is putting it out. This is the important scale. People are talking, a lot of hype going around. Now me and you are talking about AI. So what is the importance or the benefit and the impact of supporting on this?
So I think the first one that comes to my mind, and it almost just pops out, partly because I was recently just working with a digital team on a project. So we are in the digital age, and people with higher emotional intelligence are more adaptable to change. And so therefore it's a must in the fast-paced changing world that we're living in. But also we're in a more conceptual age as well. So there are several things that we can really benefit from this increase in emotional intelligence around workplace culture. And so it also leads to retention of talent, so reduce costs on attrition, for example. Importantly, valuing difference, so that leads into diversity and inclusion, very much a focus as well. And really interestingly, those leaders with that higher emotional intelligence that can foster it within a team, well, we have happier employees, and the importance of our well-being and fulfillment that leads into that productivity, efficiency, and everything else I was talking about is absolutely fundamental. So the benefits for me are absolutely there. And I think the importance is, instead of seeing this as a soft skill, this is a nice thing to have, this is a core skill. This is absolutely foundational for so many different elements. There's a great expression that I once heard, which is IQ will get you the job, EQ will get you the promotion. So this is also around our development. If we are continually looking to develop personally and professionally, EQ is at the heart of that. AI might be coming to get us, but it cannot catch up with EQ. And so let's really relish that opportunity to almost utilize that. EQ against the robots is what I say.
I like the last part, EQ is against the robots. But okay, let me ask you this. Now, you said a workplace culture, right? It'll be great if you can give an example on this. There are a lot of more traditional organizations still exist in the corporate world, right? They just like very hierarchical, need to be very on schedule. But some of the organizations were very transformed and very dynamic as well. So in terms of building that workplace culture, what in case a resistance is there to move to the new culture? Do you mean to say that they are not changing? That means they don't have emotional intelligence, they don't have that particular aspect?
Oh, no, not at all. and I think this is really important, emotional intelligence is innate to us all. It's absolutely there. It's a wonderful human skill that makes us beautifully human. I think what has happened sometimes in the past is people haven't realized that it's a skill that can be developed. So it's almost as though in the past side, well, you've either got EQ or you haven't. It's like, gosh, no, just like any other skill, whether it's a musical skill, a sports skill, whatever it is, it's a skill that if we practice it, if we develop it, we can learn, we can then utilize it. So firstly, I think that's a really important point, which is for all of us, just because we're not using it or it hasn't been a focus, it doesn't mean that it can't be. It doesn't mean that they haven't got it. What we need to almost do is strip it back down, and it's giving people that understanding and belief that we all have levels of emotional intelligence. We also all have levels around how well we can sing, for example. It doesn't mean that just because somebody is outstanding at singing that somebody else can't sing. It's just that they might need to work a little harder, or they might not come, it may not come quite as naturally to them as well. So once we've got sort of over that first sort of hurdle of understanding it's something we can develop, it's then recognizing that there are lots of examples of how we use emotional intelligence every day, but we don't necessarily label it EQ. And what I'm talking about is things like listening, kindness, respect. And yes, as you mentioned there can be some workplace cultures that maybe are lacking some of those core skills I've just mentioned, but they're there. They absolutely are there. And it's our role as facilitators to join the dots, to show people the benefits of listening, of respect, of kindness, of empathy, and how this can actually fuel and foster that productivity, the efficiency, the quality. And I guess that's why we do what we do.
Absolutely. I think showcasing that particular element of leadership with through a lot of empathy, which I really picked up from your conversation. The last part of there is the way you show up will definitely have an impact on your subordinates. To build that transformation of your culture will help you. Emma, in that line, if you had to choose a particular element of emotional intelligence, supporting individuals, teams, or leaders, as a focus, what would that be?
Probably no surprises based on what I just said there. So I'm going to say empathy, absolutely. And I know there's all the different areas. Sometimes when I've been asked before, I toy with the self-awareness, because I do think that again is foundational, which is if we're not aware, if we're not conscious, I think that's a little bit of an easy option out. So I'm going to go with empathy. And I think empathy is the powerful force that helps to support us to connect, to collaborate, to cooperate. And it's a mechanism that we can then have to use us to relate to others as well. And for me, it's the precursor to so much, to trust, to belonging, to be able to relate to another human, to understand different perspectives. And with that level of empathy, which we all have, if we're able just to be a little bit more conscious, a little bit more time, well, gosh, that's going to bring a huge amount of kindness and cooperation in corporations, but also in our relationships, and I think in society as a whole. It's an underutilized opportunity. And it just made me think, actually, there is a quote from Bob Kersey, and he said, "Unexpected kindness is the most powerful, least costly, and yet most underutilized agent to change." And I think we're missing a trick sometimes. We can spend hours and hours in board meetings looking at different ways to create change and processes and procedures, when sometimes the answer is right there within us and in front of us, which is our human connectivity and kindness.
Wow, awesome! That brings a lot of human element into it more than it, right? Emma, this is the question what I have. Normally, what happen, we have been talking because our brains adapt in such a way. When we associate certain people, we get that attributes to us, right? Now, when it coming to a very technological, because all the organizations trying to make profit, increase their share, that's no harm, not a problem at all. That's how it should be. Getting into more tech savvy organization culture, um, getting into with computers, codings. Most of the time you sit on the laptop. We have seen a lot of software engineers and those people, they're in front of the screen for about 7 to 8, 11 hours. Like, uh, do you think that person is getting a little bit of emotional distraction or disconnection by sitting most of the time in front of the computer or laptop, trying to work around his work. Because I have seen most of the people, especially the software engineers, if I'm not mistaken, they work very solely, very lonely, right? Because they need to focus. Of course, they get into a team environment, but then again, their job role is more in towards individualistic. Is there an emotional disconnection in this working environment?
Yeah, I think I think emotional disconnection, I would say, again, this is me with my slightly positive, which is rather than disconnection, there is less connection. And I only say less connection because less connection means there's that opportunity to reconnect as well. And I guess this feeds into the workplace culture. So 2 points I'd like to raise on. Firstly, in that my philosophy around the importance of empathy and kindness comes from a very driven and ambitious approach of wanting to achieve business goals and targets. And I only say that because sometimes when people are listening in, they might say, Emma, you know what, it's lovely, but oh, it's not really the real world. It's I am literally a book of quotes. There's a quote by Ralph Marston. He was a professional footballer, and he said, being positive in a negative situation is not naivety, it's called leadership. So when I talk around empathy and I talk about connectivity, it's how can we utilize that, recognizing if this is an innate human need, then my goodness, why are we not utilizing this as an opportunity to support people? So that, from a first point. The second point, just on what you said there, is you're right. If we're feeling less connection, what can we do? And having that solutions focused, future focused approach of the importance of gratitude, acknowledgement, understanding, it can fuel someone. I know if you speak to me, I just need a little stroke every so often on my shoulder, and then that's it. I'm off, a Duracell bunny, because that's all I need. I can still be very focused. What can happen though is if we're not having leaders with that higher level of emotion intelligence to understand, to check in, and I'm not talking about checking up, it's checking in with individuals to say, how are you? Or that was a great piece of work there, or just those little touch points that can mean the world, that create that connectivity. And also to go to the individuals, because sometimes as leaders we think we have to come up with all of the answers, but to connect with these individuals who are very much focused on screen time and targets driven, and there's not that interactivity, actually just to be asked, well, what would help? What do you need? Because some people are saying, actually, do you know what? Just once a week, a little bit of a check-in would be great. Others do need that. And to almost find a way of those virtual coffee chats or virtual water coolers, or dare I say, virtual cafes. Do you see what I did there?
So, like what we have now at the moment, we are doing in the cafe.
Exactly.
Emma, I really like the way you brought that less connection than the disconnection, because what is the connection is there. It's not that we are not getting connected. That's what I figured out. What for that? Yeah, Emma, what can we do to support individual in this development of this particular key skill? What, with your experience, you can share.
Yeah, so, and this is the exciting bit, because whilst it takes time, and I know that for a majority of individuals, particularly I think they're feeling it at the moment, we are often task rich and time poor. It does take time, but time is an investment for ourselves, but it isn't necessarily a financial investment. That's what's really exciting around developing empathy. So number one is making listening a priority, and you're not just listening to words, you're listening to feelings, you're listening to emotion. And by really engaging, and this isn't all of the time, I'm not asking people to just listen all of the time and that's the focus, it's just a little bit more of the time. Let's dial it up. And when you see the benefits of making it a priority, then what happens is it's like, that was a really useful 10-minute conversation, more so than these endless meetings and Zoom calls. And we're just sort of, as I say, going, it was Ken Blanchard, we're human doings not human beings. And I think that actually to step away from the doing and actually allow us to be and listen, that's really important. I think also as a leader, it's to role model vulnerability. So actually it's also about having that opportunity to, if we're wanting other people to share, then we also need to share. And I acknowledge that sometimes in all of the different geographies that we've worked in, demonstrating vulnerability can be seen often as a weakness from a leader perspective. And yet it can be a superpower to just give a little bit that encourages others. And this isn't just a free for all, but being vulnerable strengthens our own empathy as well. It's easier then to have these conversations. So I think talking to people, listening, really focusing on body cues, which again, I acknowledge with virtual presence can be a little bit more tricky. So again, where possible, let's use VC and video conferencing, but also when appropriate, sometimes we can be on the telephone and just really listen as well to the different tonality. And I guess my final bit is making sure that we take action. And it's about the little things. Often the little things turn out to have made the biggest impact. So that's the exciting thing about empathy, which is the little things that we can do can absolutely transform for an individual, for a business, for a way forward. And we can start with that immediately.
I can't agree on more on that. Little bit, a small tap on your back can do big things. That's a small thing, right? A small smile, gentle smile can create big hype. Emma, before I go to the last question, I want to ask you this. You being that particular person, very empathetical, very connected, very emotionally driven, you are very connected. Can a person be emotionally kidnapped or emotionally blackmailed on this particular skill?
Yeah, I guess it's a really interesting one. And again, the language there around sort of hijacked and kidnapped, in that, are we putting ourselves out there to then maybe for somebody to use that emotion? Then yes. And I would say, though, that is the case in anything that we do. The benefits far outweigh that. And I think it is an element of trusting the process, which is how we use that emotion as well. So when it's used with authenticity, with sincerity, and it's also used, just as I did at the very outset, which is explaining why we're doing something. So to be able to say the importance of why I'm explaining maybe something that's happened to me or something I'm sharing, and to explain some of those benefits, not just personal, but also business, it allows people to be able to foster that workplace culture that encourages it and speaks up. If it was something that's going to be used against us, and I guess sometimes people would say that's why, or I've been hurt in the past, I can understand that. What I would also encourage us to say is, instead of us saying we can't do it, find a way that you can do it. And slowly, by giving a little bit of ourselves, it doesn't mean that we're sharing or bearing all. To listen a little harder doesn't give anything away from myself. But what it does do is it creates a greater connection. So these little ways of actually showing and creating the culture are a superb way to demonstrate to leadership, to a business culture, that this is what we need to be focusing on. And again, gosh, you can print out any Google Scholar, Dan Pink, right side brain thinking. There's so much out there now, which is actually that there's real benefit here. So this isn't just me saying it from an empathetic person that cares, person that's too sensitive. The evidence is there as well. And with any business, with any success, there's always risk attached, isn't there?
Absolutely.
And by putting ourselves out, the greater the risk, actually often the greater the reward.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So my perspective of EI, to becoming an EI person, is just build that self-awareness, right? How do you build the self-awareness? Here I come to your topic. Think of the ripple effect, right? When you think of the ripple effect, automatically you will pause for a minute. Okay, if I do this, what will happen? Who will get impacted? What will get impacted? So I always, especially driving on the streets, it's crazy here, right? Anywhere in the place. So you need a lot of emotional intelligent aspect when you drive. So coming back to the ripple effect, your Twitter feed create the ripple is rather infamous for quotes, right? And what quote encapsulates what we have been chatting about today? What did
Oh
it?
my goodness, just to think of one quote. I've already quoted about 3 or 4. So I guess there's a couple. There's John Maxwell said, "I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care." And I think that's a really good way of that balance between IQ and EQ. But interestingly, Leo Buscaglia, speaker and author, and he said, too often we underestimate the power of a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, all of them being the smallest act of caring that have the potential to turn a life around. And I guess just based on what you'd said there as well, and I absolutely, create the ripple is my inner core, because never underestimate the power that we can have by just that one sentence, that one kind word, that one listening ear in that moment may absolutely help to support a change in direction for that individual and or teams and businesses. And I think we'd be naive not to realize the power of emotional intelligence now as we're going through the 21st century.
Absolutely. I believe this conversation will create that ripple effect as well when it comes out. So, Emma, almost done with our time. What's the last key message you want to give to our listeners? They can practice daily basis to build that skill. What is the last one thing you can share with us?
I think I mentioned it earlier as well, and I think this feels achievable, which is by being a little bit more conscious a little bit more of the time. And that means that maybe choose one conversation or one meeting or one interaction, or do you know what, think of a colleague and say, I'm going to send them a message today. And it's understanding that the small things that we do absolutely can make a huge difference. It would be remiss not to end on a quote. I know I just did a quote, but it's the quote that's behind me on my wall as well, and it has a massive influence. So Mother Teresa, which is, I cannot change the world, but I can cast a single stone to create many ripples. And every single one of us is creating ripples every day already. It's just being a little bit more aware of them, a little more conscious, and those ripples then become waves in the future, and then we really do see transformation.
Awesome, awesome. So that's the time what we have for today. My key takeaway today is something really interesting which Emma shared. It's not the disconnection, it's the less connection. When you start building the connection, automatically you will put on the right track to achieve whatever you want in your lifetime. So that's my key takeaway. I hope our listeners has got plenty of quotes as well as some great tips from Emma. Just think what you're going to do differently. Are you going to take a phone, just give a buzz to your friend, ask how are you doing? If you're a leader of the organization, why don't you just buzz your colleague and ask how are you doing, how is your family doing? That is a simple start. As I said, Emma said, a small start will get big way around the corner. So my heartfelt gratitude to Emma Lloyd, Head of Experience at MB People UK. Emma, thank you very much. And you can get connected to Emma through her social media platform, LinkedIn, and you can log on to the website, www. Emma, is it mbpeople.co.uk? If you can just...
Yeah, oh, it's masonbreeze.com. So we're a sister company there, just masonbreeze.com.
Awesome.
And if you want any quotes at all, then you can see me on Create the Ripple on Twitter, because that's just got quotes.
Awesome. So that's to create the ripple effect. Get it to log into the website and see what the quotes what you have and create the ripple effect. Take the message out there in the community, in the business community, in your community at around. So we will be having a fantastic world to live in as a perfect human being. Emma, once again, thank you very much for joining, spending a valuable time in the cafe.
Thank you so much for having me. All the very best.
That's the end of another episode. We are talking, and moreover, we are in the fourth industrial revolution, where artificial intelligence, robotics, and digitalization is the focus. We as human beings need to be more connected than ever before. Small act of kindness, gratitude, smile, empathy will enable to build that connection what we are looking for. The benefit of these will be more engaged employees, higher productivity, moreover creating that great workplace culture is what is it. I trust that this conversation was very useful for our personal and professional life. Special thanks to Emma Lloyd, Head of Experience at MB People UK, for spending her valuable time in the cafe. Stay tuned in for the next episode where I'll be taking up another interesting topic with an interesting individual in the cafe. EI Cafe with Azeem, a 30 minutes of valuable learning. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep improving. So that's it for another episode of EI Cafe with Azeem. Thank you so much for tuning in, and it's really appreciated. Please subscribe to the show so you get an update on my next episode. Write a review to the show, leave a 5-star to the show. Please do follow me on social media, Azeem Sahil. And do write to me what topic and from whom do you want to hear it from, where I will try to get them on board for you. Till I meet you on another exciting episode, checking out of the cafe, my name is Azeem Sahil. Stay safe and God bless you.